We have Samay Raina playing at the ChessBase India Chess Club at the big chess summer camp. It's day 1 and Samay was there and he saw Shivansh, who is a young boy, 10-year-old with an online rating of 1800, and he said, can we have a game? Samay was like, let's go for it. And he plays the Rui Lopez and now pushes his pawn to d4. Notice you cannot take this pawn here because then d5, b5 and bishop c2, both the knights are attacked, and that's the reason why d4 by Samay is a very good move. It's a good position for white out of the opening. Black can castle it out and fight for equality, but Shivansh takes on d4 and he tells Samay that look, if you take back, then now I will castle. But actually Samay can then develop his knight to c3, defending this pawn, and it's a very solid edge here. So taking back on d4 is the best, but he pushes his pawn to e5. It's typical Samay, who is all the time looking for something aggressive, but it has some good points to it. After takes, he takes with the knight, and notice the pin here. So the knight cannot move. You can't even play b5 because c6 is hanging, but Shivansh rightly defends it with bishop d7, and he says that look, even if you take here twice, I will get doubled pawns, but that's fine, that's not a problem for me. For Samay, now it's decision time. He can take back on d4, which is a normal move. He can take twice on c6. The time control of this game is 10 minutes plus no increment. Samay taking his time here and he takes on c6, which is a good move because now black will be given doubled pawns. Shivansh just trying to figure out whether he should take with the pawn or the bishop. Makes sense to take with the bishop because then if you take with the pawn, your bishop might be slightly passive. So he takes, Samay exchanges, and now pawn takes. A very logical move now is to take back on d4, and you can say the position is roughly even, but Samay goes rook e1. Once again, he is trying to prevent black from castling. Well, black can castle here, but then after cd4 he regains the pawn. The big challenge would be if black decides to take the pawn on c3, which Shivansh does, and he says to Samay, look, you have given me a pawn, I am going to take it up. So what do you do now? Now exchanging the queens is a big no, because after this knight c3, black is pawn up. You can play your knight to d5, you can defend the bishop, then you can castle, you can go rook d7. It's not a problem. But the move here that Samay plays is queen f3. The spirit is very, very right, because now he is avoiding the queen trade and attacking the c6 pawn. You can see Shivansh there slightly opening up his eyes. He's like, is everything right? Can I castle? Yes, you can. And he castles it out. It's a safe, pragmatic decision, but he could have clung on to his pawn with queen d5. Although it was quite risky to keep the king in the center, I think castles makes a lot of sense. What does Samay do now? If he takes here on c6, then after c takes b2, bishop b2, you count the number of pawns, he is a pawn down. So the most logical thing to do is not to take this pawn, but to take the pawn on c3, and then keep an eye on these weakened pawns. Yes, you are a pawn down, but on the other hand, these are weaknesses and you have good compensation. Let's see how Samay plays. It's quite amazing to think that a couple of years ago, Samay was rated just 1000, and now he's playing such good chess. He understands when to keep the queens, when to exchange, when not to exchange. And although he's not streaming regularly recently, in fact he's not streaming at all, he is continuing his chess practice. He plays a lot of chess and he keeps on improving. That's how he's become so strong. Okay, now back to the game. How does Shivansh deal with this? Because once he loses the c6 pawn, material would be even, and then he would be left with weak pawns, while Samay's pawns would be strong on a2 and b2. So it makes sense to go knight d5. The reason is that you shield these pawns, you put your knight in the center, prepare bishop f6, and the move has a lot of benefits, and Shivansh finds it. Wow, he is strong. He plays it. He plays his knight to d5. Now for Samay here, in order to continue, rook d1 would be a nice move, because he pins the knight to the queen, But it's not an easy move because your rook is already doing so much on e1 and you would want to get your bishop out somehow. Wow, he finds it. He plays rook d1. This is some good quality chess. A little stare there by Samay. He's like, will you blunder here? Then I'll take your queen. But of course, that's not going to happen. With Shivansh, he's thinking. On the clock, we are still roughly with 7 minutes per each side. So both sides have plenty of time. Black now is losing this pawn because if you see, there are 1, 2, 3 attackers, while black has only 2 defenders. So you need to give up that pawn, but for that you can make some useful moves like rook b8, putting the rook on the semi-open file, bishop f6, putting the bishop on this diagonal, maybe even queen e8 so that you look down the e file. But for Shivansh, it's becoming quite tough to figure out what to play because he thought he was at least a pawn up, but now Samay is going to win that pawn as well. With 6 minutes, 35 seconds, he needs to be slightly careful about his time because there's no increment in this game. So Shivansh is ready with his move and he plays his queen to d6, but look at the time he's taken. He's down to 5 minutes 47 seconds. But with the queen on d6 now, if you take, it's actually a very interesting move because if you take on d5, then he may want to go to b4 and threaten a mate in 1. So it's a great interesting decision. But now can Samay play bishop f4? This is such a tough move because you're actually hanging your bishop, but the queen is hanging here. And if you take with the queen, then I take the knight which was defending the queen. And now if the queen takes on f3, I make an intermezzo which is to take on e7 and then take back on f3. So very interesting move here, bishop f4, but of course very difficult to find. Mentally, you are not really ready for the fact that you can place your bishop on a square which is already attacked twice. But the concept of pin can come to your benefit here, and Samay is going towards the bishop. He plays it to f4. What? g5? No. Oh, he's confused. He's confused. He wanted to go to f4, but then he saw something wrong with it. I thought it was a genius move, but now he doesn't want to play it and he goes to e3. Well, e3 is not the best move, and now black can just get his rook to d8 and he would be doing fine. It's not a bad move also, bishop e3. It's a decent move. Just developing, and maybe later on you can put your bishop on this diagonal. But after rook d8, now you can no longer win the pawn because now it's defended twice. You can go rook c1 and put pressure down the c file. But let's see what Shivansh comes up with. He decides to actually move his queen to f6 and get out of the pin. Logical chess. Logical chess. You can go now knight d5. It's an important move because if you take the queen, then e7 is hanging. So yes, Samay does take on d5. Very important to take back with the pawn on d5. Now you need to calculate. After pawn takes, you can take this with the queen, but then b2 is hanging, or you can take on f6, bishop takes, and then take on d5. If he takes on b2, you can move your rook, and then one of these pawns would eventually fall and the game would end in equality. But you know, Samay is a player who loves to attack. He doesn't like to play chess where you are, exchanging queens and so on. But here, it's the important thing that needs to be done. Either you take. Also, sometimes a move like rook c1 makes so much sense. Because even if you take here, two things happen. Yes, your structure is ruined. But firstly, back rank issues are solved. Secondly, this is hanging and this is hanging. So sometimes appearances can be deceptive, and a move like rook a c1 is difficult to play psychologically, but it's a good move that you can make. For now, Samay thinking very hard. He's also gone below time. Then Shivansh has 5 minutes on the clock. Samay has 4 minutes 50 seconds. He is a bit confused about what needs to be done, and that is That often happens with players who are aggressive players, and when faced with queen trades, they don't want to trade the queens, they want to keep it going as it is. But here you have to. What can you do? 4 minutes left now. Samay needs to speed up. He goes queen e2. No, and look at the bar going down. That is not a good move. Mainly because you can play c6 and now just defend the pawn. If your opponent goes rook c1 trying to attack here, you bring the other rook so that your a6 pawn is defended by this rook. It cannot be taken by the queen. c6 is defended solidly. You have an extra pawn. Everything looks great. So Shivansh should simply go c6 and he would be doing very well. But he goes rook f d8, which is fine. He now defends his d5 pawn. Not at all a bad decision. For Samay now, it's still a question of where is your compensation. He goes rook c1 and he tells Shivansh, I have some play down the c5. If you now play c6, most likely I will go bishop d4, hitting your queen. Your bishop is hanging and your pawn is hanging. So it's a very level-headed move, the move rook c1. And Shivansh plays d4. Wow, that's a strong move. His idea is if you move your bishop, by the way, which is this pawn is defended twice and you are attacking it twice. So if you move the bishop away, then c5 and black is now not only a pawn up but a very healthy pawn up. So for Samay, it's a moment of decision here. Very important for him to find this tactical blow, which is to take on d4 with either of his pieces. Bishop d4, rook d4, rook d4. Queen takes d4, and then to see that the bishop on e7 is eventually hanging. Look at him calculating with his hands there, and he finds it. Beautiful. That's what happens when you are in touch. You don't miss tactics, and these tactics can really help you save difficult positions. And as you can see, Shivansh slightly shaken up with that move because he didn't see that coming. He thought it was a move where Samay had to move his bishop away, but not really. Samay has taken the pawn and now the bishop on e7 is hanging. Often such moves do lead to nervousness. He takes on d4, which is correct. Rook takes d4, queen takes d4, and now it's time to chop off the bishop on e7. Now what is very interesting is that both kings have no lufts around it, so back rank checkmates are in the air and Samay is famed for it, so he has to be careful. But he's now so much more in control, so much more calm, so much more concentrated. I don't think he's going to get checkmated on the back rank for sure. Shivansh quietly picks up the pawn. He's now a pawn up and he's very, very happy because he's also threatening to checkmate in one move. A good move now for Samay is to also take the pawn on c7. He does it. And now he's threatening a mate in one here. Look at this. Very interesting. If you take on a2, queen c8 is game over. So both players should take out some time and get rid of their weakness. Whether to play g6 or h6 always remains a question. h6 is a decent move and not at all an issue. Maybe Samay should also think about his back rank, but actually he shouldn't do a move like h3 because then after queen takes a2 he will lose a pawn. So maybe better right now to just play something like queen c4 defending the pawn, or a4, because back rank is not falling for the time being. 2 minutes 54 seconds for Samay, 3 minutes 16 seconds for Shivansh. Where do you go next now? He goes queen c4. That's a good move. Very, very calm, cool, collected move. With logical play, the game should end in a draw now because both sides have a queen, a rook and 4 pawns. But with time pressure going to come in, with both players having less than 3 minutes on the clock, this is going to also become a slugfest of blunders because it's very difficult to play when you have no increment on the clock. Rook e8 is a nice move by Shivansh. He's tempting Samay to take the pawn on a6 so that his rook on c1 would hang. And Samay quietly also gets rid of his back rank weakness. Good decision there. What should Shivansh play now in order to create play? should he enter with rook e2? But if he enters with rook e2, which is actually always a good decision when you are attacking the 7th heaven, the problem is after check, king here, check, king goes back, there is a checkmate here on c8. And Samay telling someone there, 5 minutes is all that it will take for me to beat him. But rook e2, he's blundered, he's gone for it. And will Samay find this? He finds the first check. Now you can't do anything, you have to go to h7. Play. When it's a forced move, you shouldn't think, even if it's bad. Queen f5 check. And now if king g8, there is a checkmate here on c8. So you must play g6. You can see that Samay is excited. He knows that he is smelling blood here. He knows that he can win the game. g6 played. And Shivansh has actually lost the f7 pawn. Samay picks it up. Luckily, he has the queen coming back to g7. So the game continues. But now it's a clear pawn down position, and also maintaining the queens would be useful because now the black king is exposed. Queen f4, great move once again, threatening rook c7 to pin here, and this is a fantastic position for white. For Shivansh, in order to defend, he has to go back. Well, if he sort of gets into a defensive mode, he can still hang on to this, but it's never easy. You were thinking you are a pawn up a few moves ago, now suddenly you are a pawn down, your king is exposed. He makes the first good move, first good defensive move. Let's see how Samay grinds this out. Sometimes if players like Magnus are playing here, they would go for moves like h4, g3, king g2, just improve their position before starting to move the rook. It's a very common thing to do. But you can also somehow threaten the a6 pawn. 1 minute 40 seconds left for Samay, 1 minute 37 seconds for Shivansh. Where do you go next? How do you attack the a pawn? He goes queen d6, nice move, attacking the a6 pawn. Now Shivansh must defend this. He must play a5, otherwise he'll lose another pawn, and then two pawns down would be very tough, because then the a pawn will start running down the board. He goes rook a7. That's passive. Rook to c6, amazing move. He's putting pressure on a6 and also on g6. He's completely tied black down. a5 might be a good decision now to just save your pawn. What should you do? Goes queen a1 check, king h2, queen takes a2. What a blunder. Now g6 is just falling. Look at Samay. He's like, you blundered badly. Queen takes g6. Completely missing it. The king is gone. King has to move back, and now rook c8 is checkmate. He loses. Wow, Samay Raina wins this. What a game.